Okay, we're continuing with the quotes of Carl Jung, and he is, the great psychiatrist, psychologist who initially worked with Freud and Adler. And his big thing was individuation, becoming who you are, meaning that you try to understand your unconscious mind. What do I really want? What's the best I could do with my life? What really makes me happy? How can I combine what makes me happy with how I can make some money and support myself? And then go all out to do that, and you'll be a happier person. The doctrine of the individual's dependence on God makes just as high a claim upon him as the world does. When a religion serves the sovereign, I prefer to call it a creed rather than a religion. Okay, then it's really part of the tyrant's government. A creed is an intra-mundane affair, a worldly affair that you have to obey, whereas a religion is an extra-mundane affair, meaning something that you do out of your own heart. A creed is simply the conventional morality put forth by the sovereign. The individual who is not anchored in God can offer no resistance on his own to the physical and moral blandishments of the world. For this he needs the evidence of another transcendent experience, which alone can protect him from the otherwise inevitable submersion of the mass. Merely intellectual or even moral insight into the stultification and moral irresponsibility of the mass man is a negative recognition only, and amounts to not much more than a wavering on the road to subsumation of the individual. Okay, so what he's basically saying is, it's good to be intellectual and it's good to have analyzed things, but you need to have this emotional commitment to what you think is good and right in your religion. And I say this in terms of, I have lots of relatives, Christians that are Puerto Ricans and Christians that are Irish. And the Puerto Ricans are much better Christians because for them it's more emotional. A lot of the Irish try to be intellectual Christians, but they're just sort of intellectually lightweights, and they can't handle all the apologetics and arguments to get there intellectually. It's just much easier and stronger to have emotional Christianity. When I say emotional Christianity, I mean like my mother. I never saw her read a book, and all my Puerto Rican aunts, Pepita, okay? Jesus Christo is their friend, okay? It's non-negotiable, and they're intensely Christian, doing all kinds of good things. Whereas the Irish are sometimes wavering back and forth, and, they don't have the intellect to be an intellectual Christian, okay? Most people don't. So the emotional is much better, much more powerful. All right, Carl Jung continues, it lacks the driving force of religious conviction since it is merely rational. Anyone who thinks differently is a heretic who, as we know from history, is threatened with all manner of unpleasant things. Atheism is a religion too, never forget that. It will try to force you to do all kinds of bad things. Okay, unlike other religions, Christianity holds at its core a symbol which has for its content the individual way of life of a man, the Son of Man, and that it even regards this individuation process as the incarnation and revelation of God himself. Hence, the development of the self acquires a significance whose full implications have hardly begun to be appreciated. A scientifically orientated psychology is bound to proceed abstractly. It removes itself from its object. That is why the findings of laboratory psychology are for all practical purposes often so remarkably unenlightening and devoid of interest. Man has archetypes. He is not born a tabula rasa. Okay, so that's a fancy way of saying that university psychologists, they stink, okay? For example, they can't tell you the difference between a man and a woman. How can they give you relationship advice? You listen to their research, it's always lightweight crap. And then, they'll never say anything bad about a woman. They'll never say anything good about a man, especially a white Christian man. He's the evil piece of crap. And that's because they're not really psychologists. They're really puppets of leftism, okay? And they're just parroting what they believe they're required to parrot to work at a lefty university, okay? So they're worthless. And that's why, for example, if you want advice about psychology, you don't go to a psychologist, they stink. You go to the internet. If you want advice about dating, you don't go to a university psychologist, university trained psychologist. You go to the internet and listen to dating coaches, and they're really good. They don't have any psych degrees. They're just guys who have dated a lot of women and talked to a lot of other guys, and they've seen the patterns and they know now how to handle them. Okay, so that's the way it works. Thank God for the internet on these types of subjects. The American universities have become a joke, and the reason is they have the ideology of leftism based on atheism, which says life is meaningless and all that matters is to do what the party wants you to do, and that leads to mediocrity and crap, and it's worthless. Okay. Carl Jung, intuition is perception or an idea that comes to us from the unconscious. The threat of Ariadne for me is writing. Okay. Okay, now here, this is, I like Carl Jung. The cross stands for submission to one's destiny. Okay? And that also will make you happy. Like I told you, my kid comes up to me and says, Dad, why are you so happy? Out of everybody in the family, you're the happiest person, but you have the worst life. Your life sucks. All you do is work all day long in a hospital. On your day off, you're still studying all the time, writing books, making YouTube videos. You don't ever do anything fun. Why don't you go to the beach with your mother, with Mom? Okay, and I said, because I don't want to waste a whole day going to the beach and put that sunscreen crap on myself. I can stand outside for 30 minutes. And he says, you don't want to do anything fun. Why don't you want to, go to a movie? I go, all the movies stink. Lefty Hollywood's a piece of crap. And he said, well, why are you so happy? I said, because I know who I am. I know my sense of destiny. This is what I was born to do, okay? I don't get any money from this. This is just a hobby. I make my money in conventional medicine. This is a hobby, but I know I'm right. I know what I'm doing is good, so I do it. What I'm trying to say is when you have that sense of confidence that you know you're doing the right thing with your life for the amount of time that you have, then you're happy. Okay? And it's not unique to me. All the geniuses are like this. They all want to teach and write. Okay? It's a normal thing for a genius to want to do. Okay, Carl Jung continues. No matter what the world thinks about religious experience, the one who has it possesses a great treasure, a thing that has become for him a source of life, meaning, and beauty, and that has given him a new splendor to the world and to mankind. Where is the criterion by which you could say such a life is not legitimate? That's another point I want to make. The people who criticize Christianity, they suck, okay? As they'll say, oh, Christianity, this or that. And I'm like, well, why would I want to be like you? A miserable, grouchy, incompetent, mediocre retard jerk-off who can't do anything. No, I want to be like Michelangelo, like Bach, like Newton, all these great, wonderful people who did all these incredible things. I want to be like them. I don't want to be like you atheist losers, getting drunk, being scumbags and nasty. Okay, religious experience is absolute. It cannot be disputed. You can only say that you have never had such an experience, whereupon your opponent will reply, sorry, but I have. And there the discussion will end. Okay. Carl Jung continues, all the religions are therapies for the sorrows and disorders of the soul. And he also had an alcoholic patient who was unable to get better until the only thing that helped them turn around was religion. And this patient told this to Bill Wilson, who used this idea to found Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous patients do much better if they replace their alcoholism with Christianity. It gives them a new thing to focus on. They need something to replace their old addiction to alcohol. And that's well known. The reason why medicine can't be fixed is because it's become non-Christian. The only thing that can save healthcare, the public schools, USA, the country, will be a return to Christian ethics, okay? It's just a fact, and anybody who says otherwise, they're either a liar or an idiot. They're ignorant. It's just a fact. You have to have something that respects the individual, that respects the common man. And if you don't have that, the common man's always going to get his butt kicked because big money's always going to pay to rip everybody off. That's just how it goes. 99% of countries that ever existed in this world were a tyrant who basically said, do what I say or I'll kick your ass, okay? Do what I say, I'll kick your ass. And you're not doing anything that I'm uncomfortable with or that surprises me or detracts from my authority, which means no religion and very little inventiveness or free speech. So nothing comes out of those places. They're just like a giant tomb, a grave, okay? Just like nothing good comes out of communist countries. Carl Jung. As a child, I felt myself alone, and I am still, because I know things and must hint at things which others apparently know nothing of, and for the most part do not want to know. The goal of just be normal is the ideal aim of the unsuccessful. That's what my ex-wife used to say to me. Why can't you just be normal? I'm like, why would I want to be normal? And to be normal is like to be a conformist retard. I want to be good. I want to be great. He's like, you're going to teach the kids to be crazy just like you. No, I'm going to teach them how to develop themselves. Okay, Carl Jung. Children are educated by what the grown-up is, not by his talk. Carl Jung. Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconsciousness. Yeah, you got to be kind of quiet. You got to be alone. You got to pay attention to things. And one of the best things is have a piece of paper like in your desk or even in your bedroom. And when you wake up in the morning, you'll often have a great idea. Run and write it down. Or right before you go to bed, you'll have a great idea. Run and write it down. And that way you'll remember it. If you don't do that, if you don't write it down, you forget it. Carl Jung. The world will ask you who you are. And if you do not know, the world will tell you. If a man knows more than others, he becomes lonely. Descent into the depths always seems to precede the ascent. There's some truth to that. That's like you sort of hit rock bottom and you got to bounce out of it after a setback. Okay. Carl Jung continues. The achievement of personality means the best possible development of all there is in a particular single person. Personality is an act of the greatest courage in the face of life and means unconditional affirmation of all that constitutes the individual, the most successful adaptation to human existence with the greatest possible freedom of personal decision. Yes, structuring your life in a way that you can do what you want to do, be who you want to be. And we all tend to have to do something tedious to make money, but to the extent you can, it's good to plan your life so you can spend as much of it as possible doing things you really think are high value. Okay? Carl Jung, few are chosen applies here as nowhere else for the development of personality. It is at once a charm and a curse. It first is the result of the conscious and unavoidable separation of the single person from the undifferentiated and unconscious herd. This means isolation. Neither family nor society nor position can save him from it. The development of personality is a favor that must be paid for dearly. Yeah, if you want to be yourself, you're going to ruffle other people's feathers because you're not being conformist like them. But that's what it takes to develop yourself if you want to be happy with yourself, if you want to like the man in the glass when you look at yourself in the mirror. Okay, we're going to call this the end of part 3 of Carl Jung, and we'll do one more part and then we'll finish it up. Hope you find that helpful.